have our new board members finally officially here with us, Spencer Jones and Dana Van Horn, and we'll have some time to get to know you a little bit. We'll take a little bit of time to formally welcome you and swear. I think that Todd Adams will be actually swearing you in the full meeting, so we're glad that you're here. I guess maybe why don't we just, for purposes of the record and because we are streaming, go ahead and introduce ourselves. I'm Juliette Tennert, chairing the board this year, and I represent Salt Lake and Tooele.
I'm Charles Holmgren. I represent the Bear River Basin, Box Elder, Cache, and Rich counties.
I'm Dana Van Horn. I represent Grand, San Juan, Emery, and Carbon County.
Kyle Stevens representing Weaver River District.
Spencer Jones representing Iron, Washington, Beaver, and Millard counties.
Blaine Ibsen representing the Severe River District.
Great, thank you very much. And do we have, is Randy Crozier?
He's got pneumonia.
Oh my goodness, okay, well, we'll note that Randy Crozier is excused today and hopefully,
He's going to try to
okay,
in virtually maybe.
great.
Maybe.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, at the board
Meeting. Okay. Well, we'll definitely wish him a speedy recovery, and will be great if he joins us in the board meeting, but we will understand if he doesn't. Director Hassenegger, do you want to introduce the staff who are here with us in this briefing meeting? And then I also understand that we've got a couple of new staff to meet.
Yes, we do. So with us today, we have Joel Williams, Shalane DiBernardi, Todd Stonley, Marisa Egbert, Tom Cox, Ben Merritt, Stephen Gregerson, Eric Dixon, Carly Payne, Mariah Kahn, Randy Staker, and Shannon Clow, who's doing our minutes. Thank you, Shannon, and our AV folks that we couldn't do this live streaming without them in the back, Paul Gedge, Carmen McDonald, and Seth Majors. And we do have two new staff that we would love to introduce you to. First, I'll introduce Mariah Kahn. She's actually online, so maybe if we can tee her up. Or if that's gonna do. Mariah, are you there?
I am here. Hello.
Oh, great. So we'll get your picture on the screen here shortly, but I'll just start with your bio. So she has joined our water resources team as a contract and grant analyst, and will be working as is working as part of the division's finance team. She is overseeing the creation of contracts for the division, duties that Shalane has been responsible for, as well as other financial related assignments. So we got some help for Shalane, which is really good. And I know we are super excited to have Mariah with us. Mariah was raised in Virginia, where she earned her Bachelor's of Science in Forensic Biology before moving to Scotland to pursue a Master's in Anatomy and Forensic Anthropology. She made made Utah her home in the summer of 2020, performing autopsies for the Utah Office of Medical Examiner. Her passion for public service and meticulous eye for detail inspired her to make a career change and join the wonderful people here at Water Resources. So we're super excited to have Mariah on our team. Mariah, do you want to share anything with the board?
I'm very happy to be here. I know that my resume is a little different than you guys are used to, but I really hope that I can add some value and some camaraderie to the beautiful work that Water Resources has been doing.
Great. Mariah, thank you. What amazing experience and expertise you're bringing to the work here. So we're really glad to have you. Any questions?
My pleasure.
Any questions from the board? Okay. We're excited to work with you.
Okay, and then one last one. Carly is here with us. She's our new administrative assistant. Todd, do you want to introduce her?
Yes, we're very delighted to have Carly Payne join us at the Division of Water Resources. She'll be an office specialist working with the planning branch and me as an assistant. And she comes to us with a great mixture of office administration skills as well as water resources background. She received a Bachelor of Science degree in watershed science It has a longer, complicated name now that I'll let her explain that if she desires to. But that was what it was called there before. They changed the name. And she's got experience in a dental office most recently, as well as several on-campus student services agencies that were helping students with various issues. And she lives in Layton with her husband. Her husband works for Hill Air Force Base as a nuclear engineer or an engineer working on the nuclear arsenal. So it's kind of a interesting thing that she doesn't know a lot about, I imagine. And she grew up in Orem, Utah. Her parents still live there and went to Timpanogos High School. And I live right next there, so I didn't ever know about Carly until you interviewed, but we're delighted to have her with us. Anything else you'd like to say, Carly?
Carly, we need to know what this undergrad degree is called nowadays. Todd, you set us up for it.
They changed the name to Management and Restoration of Aquatic Ecosystems.
Awesome.
Yep.
Great.
So it was a great degree. I'm excited to be back in an office where I can put it to use
Yeah.
and be help wherever I can.
Well, we're so glad you're bringing the expertise and the experience to this position, and we're just glad to have you, and good luck,
Thank
keeping
you.
order with that group, but
Well, I'm
really,
excited
really
to be
smart
here.
group.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions for Carly? All right, thank you. All right, anything else that we need to do here? Maybe we just move into the agenda?
Yep.
Okay, why don't we just go ahead and jump into the agenda. So as I mentioned, we'll do the oath of office, and it sounds like Todd Adams is going to come and do that for us. And then,
And on the oath of
Yes.
office, since Blaine Ibsen was reappointed,
Oh,
he
that's
will
right.
also be sworn in.
Oh,
So
good.
we're
Excellent.
grateful to have Blaine with us.
okay, it's an exciting day. And then next on our agenda, we have an election of a vice chair. And so for the new members, so you know, and you likely already know this, we just kind of rotate through the vice chair and chair positions. So everyone has an opportunity to serve in this chair role. But with the timing, we thought it would make sense some of us thought it would make sense to ask one of our more experienced board members to serve in the position of vice chair for this year. And so someone got his arm twisted to volunteer to do that, Charles, homegrown. So I'm hoping that Blaine would make a motion to elect Charles as vice chair, and hopefully it will second and pass. It better.
So we'll take care of that business after the oath of office
Good
of the new
point.
members so that we do have a
Blaine.
quorum to be able to
Good point.
take that action.
Great. All right. And then we'll do minutes. Did everyone have a chance to review minutes? I didn't. I skimmed. I didn't catch anything major. Did anyone?
Madam
Catching-
Chair, I
yes.
thought they looked great.
Great. That's good. That makes me feel okay. All right. So we'll approve minutes, and it sounds like they are in tip-top shape. And then we'll get our water report from Jordan Clayton. From staff, is there anything that we need to be aware of there or be ready for? Okay, should be a good one.
There's a lot of water out there. I gave a water supply update yesterday at the Utah Water Task Force meeting, and if you look at the statewide chart, it's, like it topped out at 30 inches, and we're, 16.5 inches of SWE left statewide. Which you're like, oh, we're like halfway through our runoff. It is interesting if you do a little deeper dive and look at the individual snowtail sites. Tony Grove is still showing 50 inches of snow water equivalent. Ben Lomond showing 60 inches. Snowbird has barely started to run off at all. And then if you look all the way to St. George, their runoff's complete and they're done.
Wow.
So the state obviously varies. But yeah, definitely. Here's
Will be
some of
a-
that.
Okay, excellent. Well, sounds good. All right, so then we're going to jump into committal of funds. First, we have this Draper Irrigation Company project. Russell, do you want to do a quick briefing on this one? Russell was here, thought. Okay, I'm imagining things. We can come back to that one, maybe. Okay, sounds great. All right, and then the next one is the Town of Annabella. This one is Blaine's Ben, do you want to brief us on this? And then Blaine, anything to set us up on this one?
Yeah, Ben will have the details on this, but Annabelle's a small town over in Sevier County. It's just east and south a little bit of Richfield geographically, but this particular one is for some of the secondary meters. There's 224 secondary meters, and this is a committal of funds is what is going before the board today.
Okay. Oh, and that's right. These are all okay. Okay. And then, Ben, anything we need to be aware of?
No, no, not really.
Okay. Same thing on the Gunnison project?
Yes.
Okay.
Also, Benchland, these are all just secondary meter
Okay,
projects.
sounds
They're
good.
having funds committed to
Okay.
their,
Kyle, anything on those other two that you wanted us to be aware of?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right.
Pretty self-explanatory.
Very good. And Russell, is there, oh, go ahead, Ben, sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm not looking at the agenda, so I hope I'm not skipping ahead, but the Wolf Creek Irrigation Company project.
Yes.
There was an error in the board motion in the report
Oh, okay, all right.
that will need to be fixed, I guess. If
Okay.
you want to make a note when we talk about it in the board meeting. So we talked, or in the report, the motion says that the project will be purchased at 1% interest over approximately 15 years. And that approximately should be crossed out. So it is exactly 15
Oh,
years. We're not saying exactly, but it will be 15 years with annual payments of approximately $9,600.
Okay.
And I believe that should also say including reserves, right? It does not say that in the report.
No, that's an irrigation company. So it's a purchase agreement. It's a purchase agreement, not a bond. Project is purchased.
That's right. My bad.
Okay,
So
does
it
have
should
to
say, it should say, staff recommends the board commit 25.5% of the project cost, up to $132,600, and that the project be purchased at 1% interest over 15 years with annual payments of approximately $9,600.
Okay.
The slide is correct.
Okay, good. Are you good with that, Kyle? Okay, all right. All right. Thank you, Ben. And I think, did I see Russell sneak in? All right. Russell, can you help fill in the details on the Draper Irrigation Company? I know I was on an email chain, but if I try to explain it, I'm certain to get something incorrect.
Yeah, the cost is going to be the same, 22 million as it was. They're still planning on drilling a couple of shallow wells, tying into the Jordan Basin Water Reclamation Facility, and to reuse the effluent from that pump station. They're going to upgrade the Fort Street pump station and install about 11,000 feet of pipeline. This is going to add better quality and more water for their secondary system. The cost is going to be the same as was originally authorized for the total project for all three phases at 22 million. They want to break this up into three phases now. And they're coming to the board today for the first phase. First phase is just to develop the shallow wells and install 10,000 feet of 16-inch and 30-inch pipeline at a cost about $9,570,000. And they've lined up $2 million Bureau Reclamation Drought Resiliency Grant. And suggested repayments are as shown.
All right. Thanks, Russell. Does the board have any questions on this one that we can address here?
Just a quick question, and that is a question or comment, I guess. Where they're only requesting funds for Phase 1 and then coming back for
Yeah.
Phase 2 and 3 at a later date,
Yeah.
what happens if
Yeah.
the board should run out of money? You know, what kind of a predicament does that put them in?
Yeah.
I know we can't predict that, but just something to be thinking about.
They will have to go to a bank.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. No, it's definitely something to think about, right?
Madam Chair, on this
Yeah.
The board has actually phased or funded one section of pipeline as part of this whole thing, so.
Is that picking up on the mic? Can you come to, say it on the mic just in case we have listeners, but.
I'll
You gonna talk about that?
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks.
It's on the map. During the presentation, I'll mention this when we have the map in front of us. There's a huge section of about 1.5 miles of pipeline already installed for this project that they had done about 5 years ago on their own. So yeah, they already have a major part of the transmission line for this project installed. They installed it at that time because they were redoing the roads along that section, and so they wanted to get the pipeline in while the road was being torn up.
Okay. Makes sense. Any other questions or comments? Charles, do you mind taking that one? for
Sure.
me? Thank you.
I will, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, let's jump back down to special items then. Let's see. All right, so we've got the Sevier Bridge project, Reservoir Company project, and JUAB. Blaine, do you have anything?
Yes, on that one, what that is just a follow-up, and Tom's done a great job on this. If you remember last year, it became for the required upgrades on the spillway and the downstream stability berm embankment for Sevier Bridge Reservoir, commonly known as Yuba Reservoir. And that's an interesting story. Way back when the settlers, Deseret Irrigation Company folks, back in 1902, started to build that dam, they did it with teams and horses and scrapers and things like that. And they were really short on capital money. They did it with all their own funding. So they would pay their laborers. Each stockholder in the company was assessed so many hours of labor and equipment. And then they would, anything above that, they would pay them by giving them additional shares of stock, which meant they had to provide more labor and more equipment. And that's how the original dam was built. And they had a song that they sang while they were building the dam. And it was, you be, and I don't say those kind of words, danged, the slide off of danged, if you can imagine what you be danged if you did and danged if you didn't. They had to have the reservoir to catch the water, but the more they built the reservoir, the more stock they got, the more they had to work to build it. So it was, the name of the original, the fun name, it used to be called Yubi. Yubi Dam, Yubi Reservoir, but through the years, when the USGS made their maps, they spelled it Yuba, and so it became known as Yuba, but originally it was Yubi. You be danged if you did and danged if you didn't. So interesting story that goes along with that, just a little sidelight. But last year, it was their turn for the upgrades. We did not have enough money in our funds to fund the grant money at the time. Now money is there. This action is just to bring the grant money up to the current projected costs, and with the grant money, the same terms, and then the 0.1% interest on the above the grant money for the loan to finish it. Exact same terms as what we had last year, just bringing the money current. And along with that, I do own shares of stock in a few of those companies, and so I am not going to make a motion or vote on it. So I would appreciate if somebody would make that motion, on that when the time is there.
All right. Okay, Kyle will take it. Okay, great. All right.
But we appreciate Tom and all the efforts. Incidentally, today, Joel Ferry and Teresa Wilhelm are down in the area down there, and they're going to take another updated tour of the construction activities up there. It's going gangbusters up there, the activity that's going on right now. It's amazing to me, the progress.
That's awesome.
Madam Chair and Blaine, I had a guy from Aurora in Sevier County tell me that it was sometimes referred to as Utah's best. UBE, Utah's best.
I've never heard that, Charles.
You never heard that?
That's good.
Well, that was a Sevier County guy, Blaine. I don't know.
Well, I don't know what the intent of that was. The water's used in Millard County is what that dam's for.
I know.
That's interesting.
Sevier County people
Utah's
wouldn't
best.
appreciate that.
Yeah, I like that.
It's good to know that. I feel like maybe I knew a little of the history. I knew the chant somehow. I think maybe we must have learned it when we were down.
UB.
All right, well, very good. So yeah, Tom, what do we need to know on this one?
So Blaine's
Besides
done
filled us in, yeah.
excellent job in giving the kind of the background. I'll go over more of the numbers. So last year, we had 17.1 million in dam safety grant available, so that's what the board committed. And along with that, $1.9 million in loan funds. And so if you look at the chart that says the cost estimate is 19 million and today it's 26 million, that didn't jump that much in 1 year. It's just because in order to keep the cost shares straight, we showed that those numbers last time, a year ago when we committed those funds. So like Blaine said, the legislature passed or appropriated $25 million additional grant or dam safety grant money. So we have money now to finish funding the project. So right now, the cost estimate is 26 million. So the board will be considering committing 90% of that amount, which is 23.4 million in dam safety grant, and the other 10% in loan funds from the C&D fund. And so that's 2.6 million. So that will be it's listed in two separate motions, one for the grant, one for the loan. You can do it that way, run them together if you want. Or
Let's do it in two motions, just to keep it clean would be my thought process.
Okay. And so it's projects under construction. They're scheduled to be finished before the end of the year. So hopefully we get another good winter so we can fill it next year.
Just along with that, the president, some of the presidents want to tune in virtually. They don't need to where it's committal of funds. They're going to try to tune in virtually, but they're with Joel and Teresa.
Oh, okay.
And cell phone coverage is not always the best. I'm here to tell you, down in that area.
Okay.
So they may or may not, when it's getting close on the agenda, Andy Nickel, who's president of the overall consolidated, I'm going to text him and say, Andy, you're probably within the next 5 minutes.
Okay.
And see if he can plug in. The thought process among the companies is they are just so appreciative of the help that they've received on this. And it's been a good project, and they're looking forward to, in a few months, having it in the rear view mirror, but they're very appreciative. Andy may or may not be able to get plugged in. If he is not, and there are questions, I am on the board of one of those companies, so I can, between Tom and I, we can probably field questions if Andy is not available.
All right, that's good to know. Well, on that note, I guess just in the spirit of being prepared, I mean, I don't have any questions, but does any of the board have any questions maybe to start? Okay. We've seen this one already, and sounds good. All right, sounds good. Okay, next we have Farron Canal and Reservoir Company. Dana, I don't know if you've had a chance to get to know this project. I can't remember. I think I was kind of signing off on the initial reviews while we were looking to fill board members. So I'll actually just go ahead and turn it over to Tom to brief us on it.
So most of you have heard of this project. It's Millside Dam. It's drug on forever. They started construction in 2017, and it was supposed to be finished by the end of 2018. After they had begun construction, they found a deficiency in the spillway design, so that kind of brought things to a halt, and partly because they had to redesign that, and the contractor took a lot longer than he needed to, and there were some other things they needed to finish up. It won't be finished until, cross our fingers, this fall. And so because of that and, dragging along and inflation, the cost estimate has gone up. So if you look at the cost estimate, 3 years ago it was 37.2 million, but it has increased to 39.5 million. 3 years ago, we were in the same situation. They needed about another 6.37 million in dam safety grant funding. We only had 3 million at that point. So the board committed those 3 million in dam safety grant funds. But because they thought they needed the cash flow to keep things going, the company agreed to take out a low interest loan. It's kind of a bridge loan until other dam safety grant money became available. And because of the one-time appropriation, it's available now. So we'll be recommending the board commit an additional $4,360,000 in grant funds today. And the almost 3.4 million of that will be used to pay off that bridge loan. It was just us paying us from the dam safety grants to our regular C&D fund. And then the remainder will be used to pay the board's cost share on the rest of the project.
Go ahead, Charles.
I just like to keep you guys entertained and on your toes on all these different financing scenarios. So.
This has been an interesting, well, we took a tour of that, remember last summer when we went over there? This has been an ongoing, pretty big project. It'd be nice if they can wrap it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tom, Madam Chair,
Yeah.
what impact or financial impact was there for the golf course, State Park and County Road? Was that significant or minor? Or?
Well, the golf course is one that really, it drug it out another year. The road stabilization, because the feds are involved, they had some additional requirements for that. And so that's the part that's under construction right now, and it should be finished by the end of the year. So they were estimating that part of the project costing about $500,000. Now it's 1.3 million. So that's part of the inflation, as well as having to have the engineers down there for inspection for all that extra time too, that increase in the cost.
Okay. Just want to confirm, I'm trying to wrap my head around the numbers. So, and I know it says it here, but I just want to confirm. So we're going to keep, it will be the board's cost share will be not 90%, right, of the can you just explain that one more time?
Okay, I was going to mean to explain the weird.
Yeah, no, I've just, thank you. I mean, you have it all here. I'm just, to help me.
So it's an NRCS dam, the Federal Natural Resource Conservation Service dam. So they are providing a portion of the cost share. They usually do 65%, but because of the spillway issue, they decided not to fund the changes to the spillway. So that's why normally it would be 65% from them. And then the way we calculate our cost share is we have the total project cost, we subtract out whatever the NRCS grant is, and what remains, we pay 90%, and the locals have to come up with the other 10%. So just with all the different amounts everyone's contributing, that's where we come up with the weird cost-sharing numbers on this one.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay. So Dana, are you okay to make the motion on this one?
I'll do that.
Okay, excellent. And I don't know if they told you, the staff, you guys, I've said this individually, but just to put it on the record, the staff does such a wonderful job of having, briefing us and preparing for these things. And so obviously you have a suggested motion in your packet, but then they'll also project a suggested motion on the screen. So it should be pretty straightforward. All right, thanks,
I did
Tom.
have one quick question.
Go for it.
Has the NRCS increased their part of, from the 20,600,000 to the 21,800,000?
Yes. And that's just kind of an estimated number. They do have a little bit more money available, and we'll just see, hopefully, you know, if they can pay more, that'll drop our amount and the
Okay.
local cost share amount, not the percentage, but the dollar amount down.
Thank you.
That's good. All right. Great. Thank you. Any other questions on that one? All right, we'll be ready for that. All right, next we have Summit Creek Irrigation Company. Ben is the project manager. Spencer, I'm not sure, have you had a chance to get familiar with this project? Are you familiar with the project? Would you like to share any details?
This is,
Oh,
This is Provo.
oh my gosh,
We
I'm
are
completely, I'm here, do you want to just take it on? No, just-
this will be,
You know, I was just down south. Sure, just take it. Okay, so no expectation at all. So this is one that I signed off on too but Ben, go ahead and brief us on this one.
Okay. The short version is that they're looking for $373,000 to put in a new pump and motor in an existing well. But this project is now 11 years old, which predates my time here, and I think most of yours as well. So I think a little bit of history is justified. The Summit Creek Irrigation Canal Company, they are located in Santaquin. They provide a lot of water for agriculture, nearly 3,000 acres of ground. A lot of it is orchards. They also provide the city of Santaquin with all of their secondary water. Either way, the city of Santaquin owns 25% of the shares in the company. So back in 2012, the city of Santaquin and Genola were having issues with flooding. At the same time, they were also noticing that were having issues with the aquifer elevation. It was fluctuating a lot, causing problems with people using groundwater wells. And so basically, they implemented this pretty massive project with Joel, who was the original project manager, to not only get more water into the ground to prevent fluctuation of the water level, but they also needed to attenuate the floods so that the town of Santaquin and Genola weren't flooding out. They put in, it was a multi-phase project. They put in a whole bunch of pipeline, irrigation control structures. They modified a bunch of their open canal, and they also installed or rehabilitated some flood retention ponds. So far, the board has put in $1,776,500. The final phase of the project has not yet been implemented, and the final phase is an aquifer recharge and recovery program. So they're using their flood retention ponds to absorb water into the aquifer, which they'll then pump out downstream. But their application for the recovery, right now they're able to recharge water into the aquifer, but their application for recovery has not been approved through water rights because they are required to utilize their full water right before they can get their application approved. So that leads us to this project. They have this defunct well that's been offline for, I think, about a decade because the well was drilled in the 70s, but it was installed with a 4 CFS pump, which they have a water right for 4 CFS, but the aquifer just couldn't sustain it. They were drawing gravel and sand into the pump. It destroyed the pump, and has been sitting there doing nothing for quite a while. So they want to utilize their full water right to get their aquifer recharge and recovery permit, which leads us to this project. So they're teaming up with the city of Santaquin to install a 2 CFS pump into the well. They did a pump test that shows that the well, or the aquifer can sustain that pump rate. And they are looking for additional money from the board to put that in. The city of Santaquin, their interest in the project is the 25% ownership of the company, which I told you about, which they use for their secondary water system. They are putting in about $125,000 of the project under a memorandum of understanding, which is currently being worked on. so that they wanted to upsize the pump so that they could pump water from the well up to their elevation pond so that they would not have to install a booster pump station. So this is a more cost-effective strategy for the city. And I think that's about it. So an additional $373,700, it will be tacked onto their existing loan balance. The board already has ownership in their water shares. So, yeah, any questions?
All right. Yeah, any questions on that one? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Are they installing a VFD?
Yes. Mhm. Yeah, it'll be, the city of Santa Quin is putting, I think that's part of what the city of Santa Quin is installing. They're doing a lot of the electrical work, including a VFD.
Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, but for Madam Chair's
Yeah.
information, you and Joel probably know, but I believe the president and secretary, their last name is pronounced Rowley and not Rowley.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
As far as I know, yes, it's Rowley.
Okay.
In fact, I'm related to some Rowleys whose name is spelled the same way, and they pronounce it Rowley, so I assume it's Rowley, yeah.
Okay,
Very good.
well, I would have made the mistake
I would have
either
too.
way.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And it's the Rowley's Red Barn down in Santa Quin, I think. That's
It
how
is
they pronounce
Rowley.
it, so, yeah,
Okay. All right.
so yeah.
Okay. So we think that this should be it for this project?
No,
or-
so
that's okay.
this will
Yeah.
get them towards using their full water right, but they still won't have
Okay.
utilized the whole thing. So they still have more work to do.
Okay. Okay. It'll be good to move on this if it's been on the books for so long. Any other?
We need a motion.
Yeah. Okay. So we will need a motion maker. Spencer, would you mind making the motions? Yes. Good. Okay. Thank you very much. And yeah, it's been on there for a while. Okay. Next, we have, looks like a reauthorization and committal for Hennifer Town. Let's see. Kyle, this one's in your area. Do you have any comments as Russell's coming up?
No, other than that, this is the area where I grew up, so, but I don't have any interest or conflict of interest
All right.
in this particular project. Just happens to be where I was born and raised. And it's gone through several iterations since the initial authorization, and I'll let Russell go ahead and explain
Great. All
the
right.
nuances there.
Thank you, Russell. Thank you.
Okay, well, the town of Hennifer is proposing to install a secondary system, pressurized, throughout the town, and line some ditches. And originally, the difference was they're going to install a head pond and a pump station to pressurize the system, and it was all going to be located in town. Since that time, they've gotten funding from Division of Drinking Water to put a pipeline from the town all the way up to Echo Reservoir. So they're going to have a gravity pressurized pipeline. We no longer have to do the pond, head pond and pump station. So that's about the new iteration of what we're looking at. So the new cost is $4,460,000. They've lined up a Water Smart grant. They're hoping to get a water optimization grant from Utah Department of Agriculture and Food. And we're looking at 30 years repayment this time because the cost went up, so.
Oh, okay.
And I think there's, in the explanation, as I read it, if they're not successful in getting the water optimization grant, which won't be approved until August, then they would be coming back
Oh, okay.
potentially for
Yeah.
requesting additional funds.
Yes.
Okay.
It's looking good for them to get that grant.
Okay.
That's about all I can say.
Okay. But if they came back, the terms would be the same. Is that right? Or
Well,
we would-
we'll have to discuss that then,
Okay.
because they would almost need a new bond.
Okay,
If they were
okay.
going to ask us for more money.
Okay.
So it would really complicate things if they don't get that grant.
Okay. Well, let's hope for the grant.
Yeah.
All right. Questions, comments? Yeah.
So Russell, are there any surprises on this one? Are they, have you talked these terms with them? Are they
Oh, yeah.
comfortable
they're-
with that?
Yes. They're happy about the 30 years there.
Okay. Yeah.
If we didn't give them 30 years, they were
They
going to
would've
come
asked.
today and request it, but their loan from drinking water is going to be at 30 years, and so it kind of looked like the two should match up because their costs have gone up. And based on what their average cost per home would be, it looked like it should be 30 years. So.
Okay. So just to confirm, I know, but just to confirm that 30 years is just in line with what we normally do for this level of.
Yes, it is.
That's
It
great.
fits in with the affordability
Perfect.
guideline. And it just happened to match that drinking water was giving them 30 years as well.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All right. Kyle, you're good with that one? All right. Okay, next we've got, it looks like a couple of withdrawals. Russell, do you want to just take us through those? Oh, I guess Shalane's going to take this. Thank you.
There's no,
I mean,
so there will be a formal motion. What we've
Yeah.
actually done is, rather than have an individual one for each one, we've created a
Okay.
slide for the slideshow that'll just be a motion to withdraw both at the same time.
okay.
So,
I mean, I have no questions on these. Does the board have any questions on these? Straightforward. Spencer wants it. Yeah, I think Spencer, can you take the motion on withdrawing? Perfect. So, and then you'll
so
have
it's not in
both.
your packet, but both will
Okay.
be one motion on the
Perfect.
slide. So you'll
Okay.
see it in front of you.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any questions on St. George or Sunrise and Bench Creek?
Yeah, I mean, you've got it all laid out here in the summary. Are there any? Okay. Thank you, Russell. Okay, and then we've just got a couple of new applications. We don't necessarily need to go over those, right? Just so we know. Okay, perfect. Okay, now on to the really fun things. Marisa, do you want to take us through the proposed prioritization for the secondary meter grant? The additional funds? Well, I don't know, I'm not sure. I will note that I think Marisa was working on this in the wee hours of the night, several nights, which is when brilliance comes, so we'll see what you
Juliette
got
was on
for
the
us.
phone with me yesterday for an hour and a half last night. I think, how many times did we reschedule each other? 3 or 4 times. Hey, I
Yes,
gotta go
yes.
get my kid. Hey, I gotta go do this. Hey, I gotta. And we were both so overwhelmed and overloaded. She said, let's let this go for a bit.
Sleep on it.
Let's,
Always
she
sleep
goes,
on
I'll
it."
work on it tonight. She goes, you'll probably be laying in bed. So she cursed me. So while in bed, it finally hit me. So you've got the write-up that we've got there. And I'll go ahead and, in the board meeting, read that. We really wanted to give the summary of how we got to where we are right now. Why we're doing prioritized ranking now, we didn't before. But now, basically, what it comes down to is there's some requests for additional funding. So those 8 projects, those 8 applicants, the amount of money they're requesting now is, for the second time, is totals more than what's left in the ARPA funds. And so I will read through this. So there's that legislative summary, just kind of giving the history. And thankfully, I'm always thankful I have Shalane to review my stuff. Because she's like, you got it all there, it's just in the wrong order. So she got it in chronological order. I told her, I said, well, back when that was happening, I wasn't paying attention to this stuff. So then we talk about the requirements of the prioritization. That comes from the code, tells us what we're supposed to do, doesn't tell us how, tells us what we're supposed to do. And so as it says here, we've got 8 applications. The total amount requested is about 67 million. We believe we're around 41 million or so left in the ARPA. When we say we believe we are, there's situations where now with new exemptions, allowed some of those projects that have already, money's already obligated to them through the board, through authorization, even through contracts. They may not need any of the money or as much money. They might use some of the ARPA funds, if they're exempt, to put meters in strategic locations, which they would be required to do if they are exempt. So we don't have final numbers today. I am gonna, I'll just go over just real. So Juliette may need to help me on this first, on the one about the state investment. But what it says, the division shall review and prioritize the applications. So on our applications, we have questions on those applications to get answers from the applicants to help us be able to prioritize these. So it says that 60% of the weight will be based on the ratio of estimated water use reduction, water conserved, divided by the total state investment. 20% weight based on applicant facing current or potential water shortages. When installation of meters, subsequent water use reductions will result in delay or eliminating the need for new water development. That's basically saying, what is your level of urgency to when are you going to have shortages? And so the sooner they're going to have shortages, the higher priority they are. And that's the 20% weight is based on that. And then the final one is project's accelerated construction schedule, prompt start and prompt finish, and 20% weight on that. I'm going to start with the two easier ones. The timeline factor, the construction factor, prompt start. What we did is we looked at that, and all of the applicants, all 8 said they are already underway. So not only boots ready, but shovels are in the ground. We know they are because they already came for us for other funding. So all of those received a rank of 1.0, and then we multiplied that. Instead of going, Juliette helped with this, instead of going by percentage, we're going by, instead of 60%, 20%, 20%, we're going 60 points, 20 points, 20 points.
So like the max, so if you think about it, the max, when you're thinking about priority, the maximum kind of score a project could get would be 100 points.
Yeah.
So the, in any given area, whichever project was the best would get maximum points.
Yeah. And so on these, we all gave them a rank of 1 because they're all ongoing, and then we multiplied it by the 20 points. So all 8 got 20 points for that. The other one was the shortage. So again, they told us what to do. They didn't tell us how to do it. What we did with the shortages, we had several said they'll have shortages in 2022, and that's when all of the ARPA funding started. A couple of them said no shortages, and then there were a couple others with some different years. So what we did is we said, let's take a baseline of water planning of 2060, and we'll take 2060, we'll subtract 2022, that beginning year. So there's 38 years there. And what we did is then compared their answers to that 38 years. So if they said we're going to have shortages in 2022, well, it's 38 over 38, so it's 1. So they got a ranking of 1. If they said no shortages, they got a 0 because there was no urgency there. There were a couple others that had, I think there was a 2023 and a 2040. So we did that weighting on that, 2060 minus 2023 or 2060 minus 2040, and divided those by 38 and came up with something around, it was either 0.5 something or 0.47 or 0.97, I think. Multiplied that by 20. Sorry, I know it's kind of.
So then I think, again, let's just say,
Go ahead. Yeah.
The most, again, in this framework.
Say it the economic way.
Well, I don't, but and then in this framework, because the legislation it's like relatively prescriptive, but then it kind of has the division in our board trying to figure out how to actually implement. But in this framework, kind of the intuition around it is the most, pressing severe shortages get full 20 points. Those, if there's no shortage, then 0 points. And those that have, again, again, a shortage is an issue and a challenge, but if it's farther out,
it's not quite as high priority.
Lower, essentially.
Yeah,
but
so
the
a
most
lower
pressing
score.
severe shortages would get that full 20 points.
And most applicants put 2022, so
we
most
would
of them got the
interpret
full
as,
20 points off of that. The one that got a little bit trickier was the ranking the estimated water use reduction by the state investment. I'd like to start by mentioning on the applications, some of the applications use the same numbers for water conservation that they used on their first application from the first round. And on those first rounds, we saw that the water conserved was incredibly high compared to how many meters they were putting in. So looking into it back then, they were putting the full amount of water being conserved by all meters going in, not the amount of meters that the board was funding at that time. So there was two things. They had a total amount of water conserved, but then there was also a place, because the legislation asked for this, how much water, how many acre feet's being used per lot now without a meter. A little arbitrary because they don't have a meter to meter it. And how much is going to be used after. Again, arbitrary because you don't know exactly what everyone's going to do. But most of them are a 30% reduction, which is what we've seen around. So on this third round application where they had a really large number for conservation that didn't match how many meters are going in for that state investment, I looked at the per lot. And I subtracted that out and said, oh, they're going to save 0.25 acre feet per lot, and then multiplied it by the number of meters they're requesting funded in that application. I hope that makes sense. So we made adjustments on at 4 or 5 of the applications when it came to the conservation numbers. Because we're trying to do this as fair as possible and as correct as possible. Those are the only numbers that we looked at differently, and I looked back from the August meeting to make sure that's what we did back in August too. So I just wanted to explain that part. But let's go back up. And I may lean on you real big time here, Juliette. She was working on it last night too. But the main thing is we divided that total amount of water conserved, which is why we tried to get as close a number as we really, a reasonable number, and divided by the amount of grant funding. So we have an acre foot per dollar. And then, okay.
Yeah.
And this is where I'm going to turn the time to Juliette.
I can jump. Yeah.
Yeah, the economist.
Well, and I think we should just all kind of think about, this is why I think we need some time to just make sure that we're all, like Marisa kind of implements this and then we take a look at the actual results to make sure we feel comfortable. But just to kind of explain the intuition in this framework. And now I've had to pop up my tiny Excel file. But yeah, so
and
basically,
Juliette, let me make a quick comment.
Yeah.
You'll note the shortages and the construction factors aren't comparing to each other. They're comparing to timelines and this one it's a comparison to each other.
Yeah, it's kind of relative. So again, the front kind of, and I think this lines up with what the statute is asking, right? When they say this ratio of estimated water use reduction divided by state total. I'm still not, it'd be interesting to see who wrote that, but to really understand but the kind of the concept would be then, okay, for every dollar, but just to make it easier for us to think about, like for every $10,000 of state investment, how many acre feet of water are conserved, right? And so then the project that can conserve the most acre feet of water for $10,000, and again, it's relative because they're comparing, they would get the full 60 points. And then it would be a share. So, it's basic, I don't even know exactly how to explain it, but say that these are not numbers,
Everything
10.
was compared back to that, highest one.
So say that we could get 10 acre feet of water. Again, this is not the numbers, but just in concept. 10 acre feet of water conserved for $10,000 investment. And then another applicant, if they came in with 1 acre foot of water conserved for $10,000 investment, then we would give them 1/10 of the points to just kind of, and I'm sure there are other ways to do this, but it seemed consistent, I guess. But that's the intuition is, again, if it's quote unquote more bang for the state's buck, we're giving you more points. If it's quote unquote less less bang for
If
the
the,
state.
if the
spot.
state's
We're
investing
giving you
even more for less
less.
conservation,
Yeah.
you're not going to get as many points, which reduces the amount of your ARPA grant. Because that's, we take these points then, we add these three up, you know, it could be 60 plus 20 plus 20. It could be 50 plus 20 plus 0, just as an example. We took that and turned those into percentages of what's remaining of the $41-ish million. So we want to make sure we refine this, because literally it was, last night we were still going, do we really feel like we're doing the right thing? One thing that came up in February, what we said is, do you want them ranked 1 through 8? Meaning each step down is an equal step, and we just fund the top 5 because we'll run out of money. And the board said, no, we want everybody to get something. And we actually heard from 2 of the applicants that were there that said, yeah, we want everyone to get something, basically. So it didn't seem fair to rank them 1 through 8 and have equal steps in between 1 and 2 and 5 and 6. And that's where we're trying to come up with some sort of way to, and especially this one where it's the amount of money per acre foot saved, that is the real part where you can see from number 1 to number 2 is much bigger than, and then 2 to 3 are really close to each other. So we didn't want them ranked. We wanted to give them some sort of weighted amount. So I hope that explains that.
The point you're making, though, is important to just remind ourselves of, that we directed, so that's when you're trying to implement this, the board directed you to, again, try to come up with some sort of method where we're distributing funds to all applicants.
All
Yeah,
applicants.
Yeah, and I think the way you've kind of got it set up, as you go through and refine it further, it does that. So again, if the applicant is very, very strong on conservation, has a very severe, pressing shortage, and is aggressive on time, the most aggressive on timing, then they'll get a larger share of what's currently available than,
Yep.
those at the end of the other spectrum.
Yeah.
But what I got, maybe a question, if I could just ask a question. Again, I can see how the numbers work out, right? Like, you can look at
Yeah.
ratios and numbers, but the actual on-the-ground implementation of putting meters in, is it really scalable for these applicants? So if an applicant is telling us, again, making numbers up, I need $4 million to install these meters to get this much conservation. If we're only able to give them 3/4 of that, do we assume the conservation is 75% of the?
Well, then we could be playing circular.
Yeah, and that's what I just.
Because then we'd have to redo it, and then
Yeah.
they'd get even less, and then we'd have to go back.
Yeah,
And
but I'm just
so-
saying practically, like, even aside from just how the formula works out, I'm just wondering, like, it seems like they're installing meter by meter by meter, and there's probably some, grouping of the meters, but it feels like, for me, it feels like it's scalable.
Yeah.
And I'm just asking for confirmation if my intuition around that, for y'all who actually do this stuff, is that a fair assumption, or is it one of these,
I
like,
don't
all
know
or
if I
nothing? Like,
understand well
need-
enough the question.
Yeah, do you see?
Yeah, I see what
I'm
you're
asking,
saying.
yeah.
I think
It's in the middle, probably.
yes, I think it is scalable. I think there are, they're going to have to look at their individual systems, because as I understand the question is if we only give them 1/4 of the money or half of the money, can they still put that to good
Yes,
use?
that's what-
Is what I'm kind of hearing in that question. And I think generally, yes, it is scalable. They may have to kind of figure out their system, maybe rather than, doing, 500 meters, if they can now only do 250, they may have to figure out where's the best place to do that within their system. For years, Weber Basin Water Conservancy District has been piecemealing secondary meters. They set up a project, they put in a grant to the Bureau of Reclamation, they would implement that project. And so they have been piecemealing those acres, meters. So I think it is scalable. Maybe not obviously in this case, no one will get everything they want, but everyone will get a little bit.
And not all of the applications, I think all but 2, did also request funding from the board in a loan or a bond. And so they only put the amount that match the $10 million request, let's say, that they had. So if they're not going to get the full 10 million, they might want a higher amount in the loan, the bond, and so they may not. So that is something where we're not presenting these until the August board meeting at the earliest, because they already have a bunch of money. Maybe they don't need it right now. They still need to have it under contract by the end of 2024. But we want to get this information of, this is the amount of ARPA you're going to get. We don't have that just today. We're hoping to have that in, say, a week or two, so that they can start planning, so that they can look, do we need to increase, do we need to ask the board for more money on the bond? So we do want to have that availability, that ability for them to plan ahead like that. Were you going to say something? Yeah. Sure. Please.
So, yeah, just along those lines, talking if it's scalable and things like that. We've also considered that as part of the bond process. For regular projects, you may or may not be aware, we really encourage applicants to go out and have their bids so they know final costs before they come to the board even for committal of funds. We absolutely don't want to close on a bond, but we definitely want them to have an accurate cost estimate before we commit funds so they don't have to come back, especially on bonds. In this instance, we've said we're going to do the best we can and move as we can, because if anything happens, if the cost of meters go up, the cost of installation goes up, all it does is reduce the number of meters that gets installed. It's not ideal, but it doesn't really affect the...
It's not like cutting a pipeline off. Oh, we can't go any further.
Can't finish the project. You know, they may not be able to install their full meters they're requesting with your funds, but they can still do their project. And ultimately, the law says they have to have their meters completely installed by 2030. If they decide they have to come back and, you know, request funds for another project or a new phase of a project, there won't be grant funds available probably unless the legislature decides to be generous again.
It's a great use of legislative funds for the state.
Yep. So I think really in considering this prioritization, and the reason we're asking for an actual motion to accept the process that the staff is using, is we'll take the next little bit to figure out really what is available and split it up according to what we've come up with, and then we can figure out, okay, someone wanted 10 million in grant funds and another 3.5 million in loan funds. We're only going to provide them with 7.5 million in grant. So will they want 6.5 in loan, or will they want to stick with a smaller percentage and only do what can be funded at this point in time? But that's
up to them to tell us what to
what
to do. So really today is the approval of the process that we're working on. I will tell you, we started this, me, Shalane, and Joel, in room 314, trying to wrap our heads around this. And I don't know how long we were in there, but we then, once we felt comfortable with what we had, we took it to Candace and sat down with Candace and explained it to her. I explained it to my staff in a very clunky way on Monday. It was very quiet. So I don't know if they fell asleep or just stupor of thought. I don't know. One of them told me, you're gonna have to come up with a little bit less clunky way to say that. I said, yeah, I know, I get it. I was practicing on my staff. And then I felt like, you know what, I want to talk to the economist, Juliette. And so we got on the phone and went over this. And I really appreciate that, because I feel like we've made a slight adjustment. It comes out the same numbers.
Yeah.
The numbers are the same, but it's the formula now goes, oh, okay, that makes more sense. But it's the same numbers. So that's what we've got right now, is the process that we've talked about, going through that. Again, we don't have refined numbers today to tell the applicants, even their score necessarily, because we want to make sure we've got this right.
Questions? Yeah.
How many of the 8 applications are repeat?
All of them. These are all the additional funds.
These are all repeat. So they received money in the first round. Okay, that
Yeah.
takes care of my next question. That
So,
was
and actually, one of the applicants asked over email, there, in the third round, there was a 15, 19 applications. 3 of them got small secondary meter funds, Centerfield Dual, and a bunch of them were just brand-new ones. Those brand-new ones that hadn't applied to us, they got their full request. The 3 that were asking for additional funds just to get up to 70%, we did that out of our small secondary, not out of ARPA. So what was left was these 8. And these 8 are all the ones that had already received funding. We were purposeful on that to make sure that those that had not received any funding, those 10, 11, got their full request. And it's after that that we're like, okay, this is what we think we have left for those that already requested funding.
what level of confidence do we have that we have all of the applications in for potential
So,
metering?
so almost all of those in the third round that were brand-new applicants, I think every one of them could claim exemption. They put in their application, and then the legislation hit with the exemption. One of them said, with 98 meters, said, we're probably going to claim exemption. So they'd have to put in strategic meters, so they might use a little bit of our ARPA funds to put in those meters at strategic locations. They went to their board, and their board said, nope, we want a meter anyway. So they are going to use the money. And so this is going to bring up another thing that the board, we want the board's say on it about that. So there's money. We thought we had all the money spent. There's that money, but we don't know how much that amount's going to be. The other thing is we have one of our staff members that was hired with the ARPA FTE, the full-time employee, through the ARPA grant. She's working for Water Conservation Section. She scoured the internet, Google. She looked on nonprofit organizations, water. She found that Sand Creek irrigation out of Torrey that said we can be exempt, but we want to move ahead with all the meters anyway. She found them and let them know. They didn't know. Panguitch City called me. I didn't know. We didn't know about this. I'm like, so we tried to get letters out. We tried to get emails out. We had press releases. We tried, and when people called and said we hadn't heard about this, we were still a little surprised because, we weren't the only ones doing the media just for the meters. I mean, it came out in other just legislative media information. So we feel fairly comfortable, but that the very largest ones know about this. But it's all the small ones. There's some I've never heard of before. They have never come to the board for funding. Morning Glory, I'd never heard of them. But they want to make sure, they believe they can be exempt, so they haven't put in an application, but they called because they want to make sure if they're exempt, what do they need to do now, which we're still working on that too with water rights. Go ahead, Candace, sorry.
You're good. I was just going to add to what you said right there at the end is I've contacted the state engineer because they are required as part of this new exemption to set up kind of the rules of how do people become exempt. And I let them know of your guys' desire to have a kind of a deadline for when they're either going to choose to do it or not. And so either we need to withdraw the application and committal of funds or they're moving forward with it. So if there is, because there is that little bit of uncertainty of with this new exemption, how many of those that have already been obligated may choose to go exempt.
Back out.
Yeah, back out at the end.
Or use some of it.
Or use some
to
of it,
place
but
those
not all of
meters
it.
at strategic locations.
Exactly. So we are working on setting up a meeting with the state engineer to have that discussion.
They are working on an application for that. Those are the new exemptions that came out this legislative session. The exemptions from last year, which were you can't get a meter warranty, you're in the 5th and 6th class counties, groundwater management plan area, those are going to be water resources looking at those. So we're trying to figure out a way. There's some things that are going to require them to send us something. We're trying to find out a way to make sure we have documentation. Because my question was, when this all hits the fan on January 1st in 2030, and someone says, well, I'm not metered because I'm exempt, do we have documentation set up? So that when they come to us and say, oh, we need funding for this, wait, you're secondary, you're pressurized, why aren't you metered? Oh, we're exempt. You know, so we're trying to plan for that 7 years down the road, when I think most of us are going to try to retire the day before that. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Or demote ourselves. Asked to be demoted.
We're going to have such great conservation by then.
And that's the thing, the legislation can change again. You know, it did this year. So, any other questions or?
I just want to be clear on what we're
confusions?
doing today and make
Yeah.
sure that the board feels kind of comfortable in you know, taking an official action here. I mean, I've seen the numbers, so that, you know, kind of,
I will now. I will then, yes.
Okay. Well, and I think so
I'll just put a motion.
Okay. And just to reiterate, I think what I actually feel that, Marisa, the thing that you talked about being kind of maybe the most difficult to try to implement in a spreadsheet, I feel like what we're doing now is actually very consistent with the statute. And so that it feels almost as like, that feels okay. And then the other things would be, you know, you're making these recommendations on kind of how to actually implement on the construction schedule. And there's some nuance there. And then also on the shortage, again, there's some additional there. And so I think that I guess, just to make sure that I'm understanding, that's really what you're asking us to validate.
So not the approval of what the final numbers are going to be for the different applicants,
approach.
but the approach, the process of how we are getting there.
Okay.
So, and it's those three factors. It's the conservation based on state investment, it's the construction timeline, and it's the shortage need.
Okay. Which again, the statute is the statute tells us even the weights, right? The statute
Yep, the
says
statute
60%,
says the weights.
20%, 20%.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my, who would like to make the motion on that then?
I do
Go
have
ahead,
a
Dana.
question.
Yeah, go ahead, Dana. Yeah.
So if the next item on the agenda is approved and the deadline set for the beginning of the year, and people back out and there's money, will these people be funded at 100%, or would it have to go to new people?
Well, we're planning on setting the amount for this group based on what we've got now. You can jump in any moment. And possibly have another application round.
So they'd all need to reapply to get up to that 100%?
Yep, especially, It gets too tricky trying to figure out what that could, you know, and so we're planning on moving forward with what the amount would be based on, there's 41.5 million right now left. And that's based on what's already obligated out through authorization committal or contract. So.
Yeah, and I would just add, I think in kind of fairness to everyone, if there was additional money left over, that people could apply for it if they need to.
Yeah.
You know, if we see people, and this is my interpretation, so if it's wrong, you guys can jump in, but if we see people who, you know, got what they thought was, you know, their 70% grant, but then they ended up having costs were a lot higher than they expected, and if there was money available, I guess they still can only get but it's 70% of the total project costs, so potentially maybe they could come back for more if there was more money. I think it's
what we did on this round was we prioritized those that had never received money.
Yes, yeah.
So
So, I mean, I think we would do something like that.
That's
We
my
would
con-
have
yeah.
to set up just, I mean, in all fairness, to give people the opportunity to apply for it.
All these scenarios
it's
have been
brand
running around in
new,
our heads.
Whether, you know, everything costs more than they thought it was, whether they have a bigger need that they didn't get filled before.
If the legislature gives us another 100 million, 122 million.
Right. Well, and I just want to agree with Candace. I think the only fair way to do it would be to hold a new application period and open it up to anyone, whether they have never received funds or already had. we'd still be limited by the caps in the law unless those are removed, as
Which
to
could
what we
happen.
what we could provide. But I think the intention would not just be to go to these ones who have requested 10 and will only get 7 or 8 and say, well, we have your other 2, here you go. I don't think we'd do that. I think we'd go ahead and say, okay, now we've, as you said, if this January 1st deadline becomes what we work with, and we know next January now we have this many funds available, we would open up a new application period and accept everyone that was eligible and bring it back to you next year and figure it all out again.
Please don't expect that on January 2nd.
No.
Thank you. That amount.
Just so I understand, and potentially, assuming that there was no statutory change in the meantime, potentially, we would just deploy the same methodology with that new group.
Yep.
Yep.
And they would have to understand that they're under the gun to have the money committed by 2024.
Oh, yeah, that's the other
and-
piece, yeah.
Yes.
spent
And
by
that's part of why
2026.
with this, it's like, let's get moving and grooving on what we feel is not already obligated of the ARPA funds, the 41-ish million. And let's get that under contract and moving and grooving. And because they also have to spend it by the end of 2026, so. Great question, though. And those are some things that we've all been talking about, but it's one of those things where it's like, okay, let's get through this step and then let's start, yeah.
Okay.
I think the step meeting with the engineers, state engineer's office, and getting their applications that people can fill out for exemption. Oh, let me add, we've had enough phone calls and stuff. We do have a link where people can put in their contact information about exemptions. Because our answers right now are we don't know exactly. So we can, people can go to that link, fill out their form. We do have things on there that say, I think I'm exempt, we're exempt because of 1 through 6. And then that just is contact information. So that when we get the final, okay, this is what we need to do for exemption process, we can send emails out to those people that have signed up so that they know what to do. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments on this?
Do we beat the dead horse enough?
Yeah. I mean, it's so exciting to have this
kind of
level-
problem?
Well, it really, yeah, to have this level of investment for this type of project, but it is, I acknowledge it's a lot of work on.
Okay, so
on
since
your
you brought
end.
that up,
Yeah.
I don't remember which board meeting it was that Candace announced we'd gone. Shalane and Candace, I don't know why I never mixed them up before. It's a compliment
two
to both of
brilliant
them. Shalane announced that, you know, in our 75th anniversary year, we'd surpassed $1 billion in board funding. Well, in 1 year's time, we're gonna do another $250 million in 1 year's time.
Yeah.
So, thank you, the legislature, but we
Yeah,
really,
it's a really exciting investment.
we're good. Unless it's secondary metering and we don't have to change our processes anymore.
Blaine,
Oh, yeah, so we'll have a motion, so I'll
okay,
have a slide
yeah,
for that.
Blaine, would you be willing to? Okay, and you'll have the support of what that wording would look like, because I'm not sure.
And if you want to get together, and, yeah, so, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, Shalane, so yeah, moving on. Good segue into talking, we talked a little bit about this, but let's check in on this deadline and
Yeah, so
talked a little
these-
about this last time, I
This
know.
next one is just a quick item. There was discussion in the March meeting that you do want an official deadline on the books. So I summarized that in a short little
Great.
paragraph and asked you to make a motion to set a deadline of January 1st of 2024 for applicants to formally accept, reject, or request a modification to their grant. Of course, that modification, not only for strategic meters, but because the law this year added that whole, if they have another water conservation project that'll save more money than meters. More water. Yeah, more water, conserve more water than meters, then they can use their grant for that. So we'll put together something asking applicants to officially do that. But today, we'd just like you to make that motion.
Great. Not to complicate things, does it matter that that's a holiday?
I don't think
Okay,
so.
Just leave it at that. Because I
Yeah.
feel like it's confusing if you say January 2nd or December 31st.
Right.
So. Okay.
And I know
great.
it's a holiday, and we'll probably
We live in the
technically have it
information
open.
age, like
Yeah.
the website is open, email
That's
is
right.
open.
Yeah.
Hopefully you'll be
Is
taking the
10
day off.
o'clock on December 31st a holiday?
Is for me.
Well, some of us are in bed by then, no matter that it's New Year's.
All right, that's great. So I'm just glad that we can provide this transparency and get it on the record.
Right.
Charles, do you want to make the motion?
Yes, Madam
All
Chair,
right.
I will do that.
Very good.
That sounds like an easy one.
Sounds good. Well, you know. All right, thank you. All right. Capital assets management plan roles.
So today, I'm not going to ask you to take any action. What we've provided, Marty wrote this up. I provided you a summary of why this is necessary. Personally, I think the law HB 269 was written kind of weird. It's requiring capital asset management plans, but it dictated who will write the rules for which entities. And so water quality has to do it for wastewater providers, which makes sense. And then drinking water had to create rules for retail water suppliers. And there's already a law, was already a law in place for large water conservancy districts having capital asset management plans. That's been in place for a while. So this one just said, now your board, the Board of Water Resources, has to create rules for smaller water conservancy districts. So those with an annual operating budget of $5 million or less. So Marty used the rules that existed for the large ones. We modified it a little bit and put it here for your consideration. And so all I'm asking today is that you take the next couple weeks to look at it. Let me know if you have any issues, if you think there's a problem, it's missing something. And then in June, we'll ask you to formally adopt these rules. So no action is needed on that.
It's been a while since I've done rulemaking. Do we have to do like public comment or review? That will have to after we
you
adopt.
adopt these rules,
Okay.
then we'll have to go through the
Okay.
official state rulemaking process. Yeah,
After June, okay.
after you've approved them.
Madam Chair and Shalane, can I let my water conservancy district look at this, or
Yeah.
should I not?
And it's a public document now. It's,
Okay.
Oh, it's in our
these
packet.
draft rules are
Okay.
out there, they're posted online, so yes, I'm open to comment. I would just like it back by June 1st.
All right.
June 1st, in my mind, seems so far away.
And
but-
it's really not.
so,
But with the next meeting, the end of June, I thought that gives us a
That's
month
perfect.
to
Okay.
finalize them and
yeah.
prepare them for you. So that's what I've got. Thank you.
Right. And questions or comments? All right. Well, we'll come your way with questions and comments before June 1st. Okay. Todd, Watershed Council's update.
So Todd had to step out,
Okay.
but generally, he's just going to give you a brief update on kind of where watershed councils are at.
Great.
Just, it's more information
yeah.
to the board, so.
Great.
Lots of exciting things happening there.
Okay, sounds good. So then, Candace, do you want to wrap us up with your report? And
Yes, I'll just give a brief summary of the director's report and then talk a little bit about some more information to the board when we go back to the other agenda item. And I guess I'll just let you guys know, you have probably been seeing in your emails, there's something that's been coming out called Water in the News. Hopefully you guys have been getting that, and Dana and Spencer will make sure to get you on that list. But it is a way that we can, send relevant water articles to you, and you can kind of see what's going on in that. I'll give you a brief update about Israel. I tried to give a brief update to my team, and it ended up being almost an hour long, so I'll try to keep it brief. I'll also let you know about the Bear River Commission meeting that was held last month. There's a lot going on, obviously, on the Colorado River with the Bureau of Reclamation releasing the draft environmental impact statement, modifying the current operations. So that's ongoing, and there is a deadline for public comment at the end of the month. We just launched our landscaping incentives. The governor held a press release on May 1st, and we were able to launch that through Utah Water Savers. Talk a little about the transition between the Agricultural Optimization Task Force and the new committee. Governor Cox is not only 1 week issuing executive orders regarding flooding, or emergency declarations regarding flooding. This week, he's also released an executive order requiring water conservation at state facilities with the goal of increasing Utah's long-term drought resiliency. So that's really great. To give a little brief update on Great Salt Lake. And then finally, we have a Growing Water Smart workshop the first week of June up in Logan with 7 different cities. So that's exciting to see that integrating land use and water planning coming together in another workshop being held. So that's briefly the director report items I'll cover.
Great. Well, thank you. So I guess, moving back to just information to the board. Still getting used to what we're going over, but I imagine we are going to take a look at the financials.
We'll do the status of funds, and then there was just a couple other items I had.
Great, thank you.
Hello again. So there is something I wanted to highlight today on the revolving fund. I know it's been a lot of secondary meter stuff lately, and there still is. But you'll notice in the revolving fund with the presentations today of the additional dam safety grants, it looks like the revolving fund is going to go in the hole. And I just wanted to chat that part of the reason it looks like that and what we're doing here, we did receive, most of you know, every year we ask the legislature for more money for dam safety, and a lot of times they ignore us. This time they didn't. So in July, on July 1st, we'll have more funds available for dam safety, but we don't want to wait till then to ask for them.
Okay.
So those funds that were provided will go through the revolving fund for these dam safety projects, but we don't want to wait till, I think the next meeting's June 29th, is that right? Right before July 1st. It takes some time to get the paperwork done, so we're going to go ahead and ask you for committal today so we can get going on the paperwork. So when the new funds become available on July 1st, we can immediately get them going out the door. So just want you to know we're not really overspending our revolving fund, even though it kind of looks like that. We'll make sure that doesn't happen. But that's the primary reason for that change from the last meeting to now, is those 2 dam safety grants.
And will you go over a little bit of the kind of structure of this, just since we have some new board members to talk about the
structure?
Well, just like, you can see the projects are contracted this fiscal year.
Sure. The report, the actual report.
Just if you go over it just a little bit in more detail. Thanks,
Yes,
Shalane.
of course. No. So yeah, as you look at our status of funds, I've broken it up by fund, and then it's broken down further into what's actually been contracted this year. The next section is projects that have had funds committed, but also includes those couple with asterisks are the ones that will be presented today. So they aren't officially committed yet. We're asking you to commit funds today. And so then we go, the number at the top is what we expect to have for the fiscal year. And then every meeting, we update that with what's happened since the last meeting. So you can see so far in the revolving fund, we've only actually completed 3 contracts, but one was that $17 million for Sevier Bridge. And I apologize, I notice now as I look at this, most of those dates are actually cut off, the ones on the left side. So you can't see, but That Severe Bridge contract was actually completed on July 1st of last year. So the very first day of the fiscal year, we got that contracted. And then further down at the bottom is the projects which are authorized, which at this point in time in the revolving fund, there are none that are authorized and not committed. But you'll see some as we go further on. So we've got the little asterisks at the bottom to let you know what's special about anything. So the single before the number gets you what's to be presented today. So hopefully those always match up with what's the reports that are in your board folder. Double asterisk usually indicates a grant or something special. So in the revolving construction fund, those are dam safety grants. You can see there's still not a lot happening in the city's water loan fund. It just continues to grow a little bit because we haven't funded anything from there for a while. And then you move to the Conservation and Development Fund. C&D fund is our big one besides the meter grants where lots is happening. You can see that in this current fiscal year, we've actually contracted for about $64 million. And then we have a lot more committed. Another $35 million committed. The authorized is broken up into two sections in the C&D fund, just so they're easy to see. We didn't do it with the committed or the contracted, but in the authorized, we have regular projects authorized and then secondary meter projects authorized, just to kind of keep them separate while we track them before they get to the committal phase. So there you can see the several there that will be requesting committal of funds today. And we still have funding available in that one. So as you noticed, 3 new applications in your packet. I believe they're all coming from the C&D fund. We'll look at those on the last page. So after the C&D, then we have our different grant funds for secondary meters. We've got the small system secondary meter grant funds, which you all committed 3 more projects last meeting. So we're actually using a little more of the funding that's available there. And then our $250 million for secondary meter grants. We've actually contracted enough now, goes well on to the second page. So 53,
Amazing, yeah.
53 grant contracts this fiscal year so far for $160 million. Another 47 committed, just over $1 million authorized. Not sure what those folks will decide to do, but hopefully today we'll set a deadline and they'll have to make a decision. And so yeah, Marisa said 41 and a half. I have a little bit different number, just over 41. That's one thing we'll do before June is make sure we all have the same numbers. Figure out where any discrepancies might be. And then the last page of the status of funds is additional future funding needs. Some of these are projects that we had applications submitted quite some time ago. Again, I apologize, you can't see some of those dates. But those 3 new ones are in there for Eden, Liberty, and Grantsville. So none of the new applications that have been submitted are really large projects. So we've got funding to cover those. But we do have some large outstanding requests out there. So any question about the status of funds?
I'll just make a comment and just say, Shalene, thank you for, continuing to provide us with this information. And then also, so our new board members know, having this last page it's kind of evolved over time. So it's nice that we've pulled, so that we've had projects kind of counting against our balance in the past, that have been sitting on the books for, you can see one here that's from, looks like 2008 or, quite a while ago. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes it wasn't really clean to really look at, because that one would have to be reauthorized. And so anyways, we appreciate you. I know that took some work to kind of get everything separated and track this way, but I appreciate it's, for me, it's a little bit like cleaner and I can have a
Yeah.
better idea of the balance.
It's
this way,
no
so thank
trouble,
you.
and I
We
think it's
appreciate
really
that.
good for staff to be reminded that some of these are still out there.
Yes.
As you see, 2 of them today getting withdrawn. So
Yeah.
yeah, if they're not moving forward, let's get them out of the board's consideration.
Great, thank you. Questions, comments?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and just a couple other items for, we regularly give you Lake Powell Pipeline updates. Currently, they're working on updating the ethnographic study. The district obviously continues to emphasize water conservation and reuse, and that is where their focus is right now. The basin states continue to work to resolve issues related to the Colorado River as a result of drought and climate change and growing populations in the West. There's, all of the things that we're all experiencing. I do have to note that I saw an article in the news that said that there was a projected almost 70-foot increase to Lake Powell this year, which is great. I mean, that doesn't get us out of the woods, but it definitely takes some pressure off while we implement all of these different conservation efforts. I also had on my list the board tour in August in the Bear River Basin, or Bear River District. Yeah, it looks like Maurice is doing hand signals to Charles to give her a call. You guys can, okay, that's fine. Do you want to get a mic? And while Maurice is coming up, I did go into Maurice and was like, let's make sure to do something fun. Yes, let's work. Let's go see some cool projects, but let's get them out on some water. And
She said that right after returning from a field trip.
I did.
So she's like,
It
we
may
got to
have
have
been.
some fun. So the question I asked Candace was, so does it always have to be the project funding managers that need to put this thing together? And I didn't hear any dissent on our section meeting about this, but I actually heard a woo-hoo, I think, from someone. We're going to have Heidi from the Water Conservation section and just went blank, Crystal from, I don't know what they're called, the IT. WITCOM. Web IT and Communications Group. They're going to help us put the board folder together and meet with us. Obviously project funding section needs to be involved in some of it, but they're going to help us do that to make sure we have fun. I mean, to make sure we do good things, but also follow Candace, our director's directive to enjoy ourselves.
And I have some support from the 2 water conservancy districts and River Canal Company.
Great.
Buy
So,
us a meal or 2, something like that.
and I may have mentioned to Heidi and Crystal that there may be something like that might be a possibility. So they know it's in your area, Charlie, and I'm meeting with them next week just to give them kind of this is what we do, this is what we put together, but then it'd be good for us to catch up with you. I'm going to assume you have some ideas, but now you've heard Candace, our director's directive on part of that too.
Well, I did speak to someone in the Division of Outdoor Rec, which is a new division that was formed last legislative session, or last year. And he told me, he's like, if you ever need anything, let me know. So I can phone in a friend to get some boats.
Maybe we need to go measure how deep Bear Lake really is.
Yeah, Bear Lake is in my area. Last time we did this, I've been here too long if I've done this twice.
We stayed over on your side of the. We went up to White's Valley and.
Yeah. And Madam Chair at our St. George meeting mentioned she would be interested in seeing the USU Water Lab.
That would be very interesting.
And we did that last time.
Visited?
Yeah, I think we did last time, but yeah, that was a while ago.
And we did have ice cream too.
Yes,
but,
that's actually what I'm aiming for, actually.
Aggie
and then
ice
if we
cream.
could do some raspberry shakes, we just have to kind of.
Well, maybe Juliette needs to come to the meeting too, Charlie.
I'm there for the desserts. Let's just say.
Too many miles in that basin.
So,
That's the problem.
especially for Spencer and Dana, that we do the board tour the day before the board meeting. It is kind of a long day. We do try to make it so it's not, so we enjoy ourselves on the bus rides. There might be prizes. And then on Thursday, we do the briefing meeting in the morning, right? Early? Okay. And then earlier usually, and then the board meeting after that, up in that area. So that's something we'll work out with Charlie, where everyone will stay, the hotel, where we'll have the board meeting, all that sort of stuff.
So mark your calendars for August 10th. Well, no, that 10th is the board meeting, so 9th is the board tour.
And Randy's not here to say no, so he will help us out with stuff too. Bus, and there's logistics that will get done. So
Good.
Shannon too.
Okay, sounds great. So one last thing before we head upstairs for lunch in 314. Since we're having new board members and generally just trying to update everything, we're getting new pictures and would love you all to get new pictures today if you're up for it. If you're not interested, we can do a follow-up, but Michael will be available at lunch to snap a pic. So.
If we're satisfied with the one that's there, we're okay.
Is that what we're doing? Yeah. Or are we?
I think if they're happy with the one that's already on the wall on the website, stick with it.
Okay.
I was younger then.
Will the background match? I thought we were trying to update them so that they all look the same. I would encourage everyone to get update. I'm going to get an updated picture. I'm just glad I dyed my hair so you can't see any gray hairs from being director for almost the last 2 years. Yeah, so encourage you to take a picture if you feel comfortable, or we can reschedule as well if you want. If you don't, then that's fine too. But okay, thanks.
Adjourn on this meeting? I don't know. All right, well then.
Consider it adjourned.
All right, we've got a motion, we've got a second. All in favor? Aye. All right, very good. Lunch in 314.